Good morning and welcome to the new edition of Dr. Lamba's Awakening Call. India, which calls itself the cradle of democracy, having democracy at the grassroots level thousands of years back, today claims to be the greatest democracy in the world. And yet, there's ambiguity about India, whether it's really democracy, a liberal democracy, or is the democracy in India a facade for authoritarianism, totalitarianism, and dictatorship. The many contentions about it not being a democracy have been because of the Western's perception. The international reports from the various research bodies on India and their democratic ranking, that ranking is in fact damning. Sometimes they do seem exaggerated, misleading, and distorted, especially when I see those rankings slotted alongside Pakistan as being partly free and India being placed below Libya in the happiness index. And this is not only ludicrous, it's ridiculous. But at the same time, there's a kernel of truth. Nobody can deny they're absolutely falsehoods. And to disregard them totally would be fatal and injurious to the interests of India and its global standing. As I said, there's a kernel of truth in all the criticism that is leveled against India. India seems to be like Sisyphus, hanging, the chin touching the water, but it cannot drink it. The curse of authoritarianism is there. India does seem between the fear of being totalitarian and the hope of being a democracy. It's neither a developed economy nor a backward country. It's on the road to being developed and road to being the global power which should be there and hopefully will be there. Nobody can deny that India has made great scientific strides and many of the people and the political leaders are under the spell of ancient myths of the past glory. They're lost in the age-old superstitions. But India is not a really totalitarian Hindu state as is sought to be made by. The renting of multitude, the changing of the names of the places to bring them in conformity with the old Hindu culture are there, but they do not impact the reality of the Indian people, the Indianness. But I won't call it an enlightened democracy as well with secular credentials. It is strange. You know, the old Indian concept of Ardhanari, sure, half man, half women, like mermaids, half fish, half women. India is neither a totalitarian Hindu state nor absolutely really democratic. In the idea of India is neither one thing nor properly the other. India has always been an enigma wrapped in a riddle. The international reports downgrading India on many parameters that determine, according to them, a vibrant democracy, as I said, may not be entirely accurate and accurately correct. The perception of India, a beacon till now for the rest of the world, according to them, is in danger of becoming a diminishing democracy. Perceptions do matter. Let's not deny it. But to call Modi a tyrant comparable to the dictators of the past, Stalin of the former USSR, a Hitler of Germany, and as one Indian leader, Rahul Gandhi, put him at par with Mussolini, those are the people who put millions to death. Can he be likened to the modern day despots like Putin of Russia, Erdogan of Turkey, Mohammed bin Salman, the present de facto ruler of Saudi Arabia, or Xi Jinping of China, some of whom have not hesitated to ruthlessly eliminate their opponents through blood-curdling methods or simply make them disappear overnight without a trace? No, such things don't happen. People might have been arrested, people might have been prosecuted, but the institution of judiciary is so strong that it set them free. So dictator is when his word is law. Here we don't see the word is law because of the ever wide open, wide awake judiciary. Now, these comparisons with dictatorship made by the detractors and critics within India and outside India are far-fetched, and his bitter high-profile critics, political leaders and intellectuals, so-called intellectuals actually, who are all leftists. Now let's be very clear, those intellectuals are 99% leftists. So they have their political agenda. They are not honest. They attack him at will, criticizing him copiously. Now, the very fact that they can criticize him and get away with it shows that India is not a dictatorship. Can you imagine a Rahul Gandhi, a Mamata Banerjee, a Pratap Bhanu Mehta, a Ram Goa walking free in China or Russia or in Iraq of Saddam era after criticizing those governments? But does that make Modi a liberal Democrat? No. Although nobody might give him the certificate of being a liberal Democrat, but let's not forget that for every Ram Goha or for every Pratap Bhanu Mehta, for every Mamta, there are scores of Buddhas, Sudha Bhardwaj languishing in jails without a fair and speedy trial. But then that has been happening all the time. The famous ISRO espionage case, where the Supreme Court freed recently, shows that this is not an exception as far as this country is concerned. People have been put in jail under trumped up charges. I know it. But that doesn't mean the whole country is dictatorial. The millions of fans of Modi who see him as a demigod would approve of his autocratic way. Actually, this is a king stroke, king log and king stroke. His predecessor, Manmohan, was a deaf, mute prime minister. He was a king log, whatever Madam Sonia would say, he would carry out. This man is a king stroke, so he's strong. The country was adrift at that time because of the weakness. And when a country is in the morass of weakness, the country wants a messiah who can be dictatorial tendencies, but not away from the wishes of the people. So if he's dictatorial, it's because of people wish him to be. Modi is thoroughly modern. Now, there's the contradiction in Modi. Nobody can deny. Modi is a person who has a double personality. I won't call him Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, but psychologically he's modern, absolutely modern, but he also worships false gods. He pushes for solar energy on one side and vaccine on the other, and the Rafale jet fighters on the and then he invokes cosmic energy to drive out COVID virus by beating the gongs and blowing the conches at the auspicious hours based on auspicious numerology. Maybe that's a technique of getting to the people and connecting with him. He praises India as the largest vaccine producer of the world, but does not pull up his calculations when they launch a voodoo medicine of a certain Baba to fight the coronavirus. A drug that has no clinical evidence of trials and has been condemned even by the Indian Medical Association. He is, in a sense, like countless Indians. He is the epitome, he is the representative of Indians per se. They embrace modernity without abandoning their superstitions. They are absolutely modern, like the moms, singing pop songs, and then when the sun goes, she says, "Hey, Sonny, come here, have curds and rice before you go for your examination." Modi is not in the spot. That's the fact. Although many intellectuals compare him, one intellectual journalist, Tavli, was all praise for Modi for years, and then she became against him because why? Because her son's OCI card, Overseas Citizen of India, was cancelled, and it was cancelled because the father happened to be Pakistani, and that's against the rules. Why did Modi's government not break the rule to help Tavleen's son retain the OCI card? That's a grouse, so she's against him. Modi's deputies may not be able to effectively pack the charges of his authoritarianism. That's a fact. His fiery oratory, whether it's on Round Temple, whether it's on beef ban, or the protection of the holy cow. His party's narrow definition of narrowism, intolerance to criticism, status of the migrants, his espousal of the brazen authoritarian politics have encouraged vigilant justice. There was lynching of innocent people that was condemnable. But did Modi do it? Did the police not arrest the people who indulged in the murderous attacks? It did. And if it did, why blame Modi? I agree. His silence at times and reluctance to rein in his overzealous officials and lunatic fringe of his party have resulted in arresting of dissenting academics, some journalists, some students, and could have triggered violence between the various sections of society. But even the most democratic people have to indulge in some shades of authoritarianism. You have to be tough when goings get tough. So it is when the allegation is made that there's a penchant of reform, he is pushing through executive orders and ordinances without consultation, even if well intended, may have brought misery to people. Now, again, this is something wrong. India has mostly, once the leaders are elected, they work that way. If, for example, when the much lauded act, Hindu Marriage Act and Hindu Code Bill was brought by Jawaharlal Nehru, if it had been offered by consultation, even the President of India was against it, the Home Minister was against it, the Deputy Prime Minister was against it. And yet he rammed it through. But nobody called him a dictator. When the first elected government in India, in Kerala, was dismissed by Jawaharlal Nehru, nobody called him dictatorial. Why? Because of the leftist attitude. He was leftist, so the so-called leftist intellectuals would not criticize him. The point is, are the people happy? And do they feel they are free? What Pope said, for forms of government let fools contest. Whatever is best administered is best. When Sweden's We Dem Institute, which publishes its annual democracy report, described India as electoral autocracy. But tell me, if it was true, then many of the India's formal institutions would be compromised, including the election machinery and dictators. Democracy would be undermined if that was so. Now, here's the contradiction in the report of Sweden's We Dem Institute. If India was really an electoral democracy, do you think that the capital city of India, Delhi, would be ruled by his arch enemy, Kejriwal, Punjab by Amrinder Singh, representative of Rahul Gandhi and Sonia Gandhi, Andhra Pradesh by Jagan Reddy, who's a Christian, Telangana by K. Chandrasekhar Rao. Today, 70% of India is ruled by parties which are opposed to Modi. 70%. And I just concluded local civic body elections in Andhra Pradesh. Jagan Reddy's Congress completely wiped out BJP. But still, as I said earlier, there's a kernel of truth. And I'll come to that. Washington's Freedom House Index rated India as partly free and actually placed it at par with Pakistan. That was something unimaginable. And then comes the World Happiness Report 2020 by UNDP. United Nations Sustainable Development Report places India at number 139 out of 149. And India is below Libya. Libya is at 80. Belarus at 75. Venezuela at 107. And India is below that. Niger, Pakistan, Saudi. Wow. To think that the people in Niger and Venezuela, people in Belarus and Saudi are better than people in India? The people who drafted this report must be living in lunatic heaven, not a paradise of fools. No, lunatic heaven. Then in international research body positions India below Saudi Arabia, where a dissenting journalist, a Saudi national can be dismembered by his execution staff, dissolved in acid, where people are beheaded in full view, public view, for violation of Islamic laws, where an adulteress can be stoned to death. And you believe that Indians are less happy than that? You must be in another world. If a man, it's like this. If a man was to hold a red hot iron rod in the left hand and ice in the right hand, you would find after a couple of minutes, his one hand would be burned and the second would suffer frostbite. But the bean counters, statisticians would say, well, the body temperature is nice and warm because the average is good. This is exactly what Freedom House has done. But then, as I said, there's a kernel of truth. You know, Bertrand Russell had talked of the administrative fallacy. And strong leaders like Modi fall into that category. These people are liable to imagine that the state they administer is tidy and neat organization. It is a living organism and it's homogeneous. Nobody can deny that India is not homogeneous. But such people wish to fit men into systems rather than to fit systems to men. So that is the tragedy. The system is not made to change according to the need of an individual. Individual has to change, but that happens everywhere. Human beings and their communities are infinitely complex, diverse, with their desires, with their traits, with their proclivities. So diversity, creativity, freedom, liberty are necessary conditions. In reality, India is at a crossroads. Where should it head? Should Modi be guided by his jingoistic advisors who are advocating a policy of isolation and misplaced nationalism and practice of partisan governance that favors one community over another? Or those people who are inward looking, self reliant, bordering on hubris? That would lead India to a climate of intellectual incest. Let's be very clear. I'm not right. I'm using Arthur Koestler's word. This is intellectual incest. It will stunt the growth, and the ever widening thought and action that we want would not be there. The country would be fragmented. On the contrary, should we pursue a higher genuine democracy that will enable a healthy milieu of economic, political, social, and cultural world, which he should do. As a matter of fact, the Rig Veda is an ideal guide. Let noble thought come to us from every side. And that should be endeavor. But to wind up, I would say the ambiguity of India is whether it's an authoritarian state, is that it's neither an authoritarian state nor a general democracy. It's somewhere in between. And like multicultural societies, like plural societies, which is normal, it would be like that. You cannot have one size fit all. Modi is not a tyrant in the mold of Stalin or Hitler, nor is he the dumb, driven Manmohan Singh. The reality is, India can be leading light in the community of nations. And Modi, with his mandate and stature, is well placed to lead India into that exalted position. And if he does that and just ignores the lunatic fringe, he can make India a real democracy with dissent being accepted. Dissent is not a crime. And if it did so, it could be his lasting legacy. But as it is, to call him a dictator is mistaken. To call him authoritarian is mistaken. But to say that India is an absolute democracy is also equally wrong. We are in between, but essentially, inherently, we are democratic. That nobody can deny. Thank you.